Here at A Couple Believe, we're all about inspiration. And that's why we teamed up with a company who's all about supporting the educators who inspire us every day. Teachers Insurance Plan, auto insurance dedicated to giving educators the special rates and great service they deserve.
Don't believe me, just
Eric, welcome to A Couple Believe podcast. I know you're from a very small town in Wasilla, Alaska, with about 10,000 people, but I want to know what that was like going from Snowshoe Elementary School to being able to now go to becoming a rock star and what that life is like. So I come from a town that has 100,000 people, and you 10,000, man, what's that life being a rock star now?
Man, you fold that by 10 again. When I was a kid, it was like 800 people, 1,000 people, It was a
Wow.
tiny, tiny little town. What's happened is like everything around there. Alaska is just this massive, huge thing. Bunch of different climates, bunch of different kinds of Alaska. You couldn't get more different from like the North Slope down to the southeast and the islands. It's just it's its own thing. But it all kind of hubs around Anchorage, and Wasilla is getting slowly kind of swallowed by Anchorage, Alaska. So it's become a little suburbanized. But when we were kids, that was it. Like Wasilla was the town, and I lived like 10 miles outside of a town of 1,000 people. Like everybody was just like far flung, super spread out. I I haven't lived there for 20 years now, 25 years,
Mhm.
and I'm still in culture shock, you know? Like every time I go to
That,
yeah, every time I go to a new city, I'm like, this is much bigger than Wasilla.
See, that's crazy.
This is different.
That's crazy because being a Jersey guy, like I have no idea what that life is like out there. Obviously, you see stuff on TV with Alaska, you think of cold icebergs, this and that. But growing up
Yeah,
in like
yeah.
a town, you get to see so much more. So that's pretty cool. But I know in 2000 you did move to Seattle and then got into a band with the Lashes. So tell me what that
Yeah.
transition was like at 18 years old.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any family here. I didn't have any friends, but I kind of had the benefit of having a lot of older friends in Wasilla. And
Hmm.
I was working like back busting jobs, I was working at an airplane hangar. I was doing construction. I was doing some roofing. I was just like digging holes for 10 bucks an hour for whoever needed a hole dug. And I was starting to get paid more and more and make more friends, and I saw this whole life kind of laid out in front of me in my small town in Alaska. And I kind of had like a midlife crisis in the first quarter of my life. And I'm like, I could keep doing this. I could stay here. I'd be good, but I kind of want to see what else is out there. And I was a smart kid. I tested well. I had guidance counselors that were frustrated with my lack of like wanting to keep going down academia, pursue something bigger. But I had one guy that was like kind of this chill guidance counselor that thought outside the box, which you wouldn't think in Wasilla, Alaska. You'd have these like progressive people that are looking at anything besides armed services or college or, going straight to like blue collar work. But this guy
Hmm.
was like, "Hey, I know what you can do. I've seen you play. I've heard your teachers talk about you. Um, get out of here. Go move somewhere. Go make some friends. Go find some people like you, and go start a band or start a collective." Or I forget his exact wording, but it was basically like, leave Alaska. Alaska's still here. You can come back. College is still here. You can always go back and give academia another hack in like 4 years, but it might be hard to like chase a dream in 4 years. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
he had this benefit of wisdom and kind of set me free. And my mom didn't want to see me go. My family didn't want to see me go. My friends didn't want to see me go. But I told them I'd be back and I'd be in touch. And I just went out here and I did it. And I know I
So,
got lucky. I know I got real
well,
lucky.
you got lucky, but I feel like opportunity presents itself and you were prepared for that moment. And tell us a little bit about the Lashes and what type of music that is and how you got
Yeah.
into it, obviously being a guitarist and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean the Lashes was it was a band of my best friends at the time. It was one of the guys I worked with, his friends from back in Spokane, Washington, just kind of this band of brothers that it just all happened to be pretty slick players. So it was a pop band, we kind of we looked like a lot of bands from that time period where we had like the swoopy hair and we styled ourselves up. But we sounded more like an 80s pop band, We kind of looked like the Strokes. We sounded like Huey Lewis and the News or something, Like we kind of had this like fun party guy energy and it was a great time, man. We I got to see a lot of the world. I got to see it all the country, hit 50 states by the time I was 24. I had a song on the radio, got to do a little bit of TV. We just got put on a little rocket ship when we were super young and just again that small kid from small that kid from small town Alaska was just getting his mind blown every chance he got. I remember the first time I got to Jersey. I remember the first time I played the Shore, first time I played New York City, first time I got on the East Coast. It's just all
That's amazing.
outrageous to me. Yeah, it was
No,
super fun.
that's it's crazy to think back on that and reflect on that. Obviously, and then, coming here to Jersey, Jersey Shore is huge for us. But obviously,
Yeah.
we know you joined Portugal the Man in 2015, but there was plans of you joining back in 2007. Can you tell me a little bit? Take me back to that time period, and obviously your injury that happened in May of
Yeah.
2007, and bring our listeners to everything about your story and who you are today.
Yeah. Yeah, let me fill in some of those blanks. So, the Lashes, that was kind of my first stab at a band with some success as a teenager. So that ran from the time I was 18, 19. And by the time I was 24 or 25, we had been on a major label. We had put out a record. That record did what it did. We had some songs that made it onto the radio, and we worked our butts off, and we did it all game. Like no money coming, very little support from the label. We just did it because we loved it, and everyone could, because we're kids with nothing to lose. So we didn't mind being broke and hungry and smelly and sitting in the back of a van. That was part of it, you kind of living like a pirate. But it had kind of ran its course, and what money was there was pretty much gone by the time I'm 24, 25. What support that was there was kind of waning. I kind of wanted to keep doing it. Not everyone kind of wanted to keep doing it. Meanwhile, Portugal the Man, the singer of that band and the co-founder Zach of that band, I grew up with these guys. They're also from Wasilla, Alaska, of all places on this big blue earth. And they're this band that's like gaining momentum really organically, and they're playing 250 shows a year, and they're doing the same thing that we're doing, just in a different van on a different freeway system. But their momentum's still going, and I'm like, man, that'd be a real fun transition for me to go from this band of people that I love, this band of brothers, and to jump on with schoolyard chums that are doing it on a higher level. It's that's unbelievable. So I was in talks with them, and the my two friends from Wasilla were on board. I was working it out with the managers, working it out with all the powers that be behind the scenes with Portugal, and then I got hurt, and I basically I grew up doing all kinds of wild Alaska stuff, jumping headfirst into rivers, doing
I
boogie
was about to
boarding,
say,
and
what is some wild Alaska stuff?
yeah, I mean, I jumped off mountains. I jumped into lakes. I chased around bull moose, like I
Oh,
did I did I rode in the back of trucks. I drove people around with people in the back of my truck. Like we did fun stuff coming up. But when I got hurt, I was just at this like very civilized little backyard party. Um, I was just chilling with some friends. I sat on this retaining wall. Retaining wall goes back. I went to catch myself and there was nothing behind me. So I just fell into a hole. And it's as simple as that. That kind of changed everything in the blink of an eye. But
yeah. I'm about to say, how
my
far
my
did you fall down? How far did you fall down?
12 feet, maybe, you know?
Okay,
And
so
then, and
yeah.
the number of times that I had fallen 12 feet off something and bounced back up and was like, well, we're good. You know, how many times in my life had I done something like that and been totally fine? And, you know, I fractured a couple of ribs, collapsed a lung, but, I had that kind of lightning bolt moment. A lot of people with spinal cord injuries describe that moment where your eyes light up, your brain lights up, you feel this like instant sort of shock, and then you know. And I knew, you know. I didn't
Absolutely.
know anything about spinal cord injury. I didn't have any friends that had spinal cord injuries, close friends anyway, but I think I knew what was going on pretty much right away.
See, that's crazy to me because I did felt that lightning bolt moment where you're just like, well, my body goes into full shock and you actually
Yeah.
have no idea what's going on and what's happening, but then you know it's something serious and it's something severe, and then
Yeah.
obviously everything that comes after that. Me with my level of injury, I was on ventilators and feeding tubes and everything, but I heard after your injury, like a week or so, you had your friends come by the hospital with a recorder and you were trying to record a song, or like what you
Yeah, I
gotta tell us
did.
that story, Eric. Like what?
I did. That was the thing. You know, I was young. Yeah, my band wasn't touring a whole lot, but Seattle's a big little city. It's a super tight-knit community, and all these musicians and all these friends of mine, they didn't let me quit. They didn't let me stop. It was just all right, what's next? You know, because I always had a plan. I always had a backup plan to that plan. Um, I always kind of had like a flow chart of things of the way that I thought my days were going to go. So yeah, that was a situation where uh, I had a buddy who was working on a record, and he came in like day 6. And by the way, this happened at the beginning of the summer in a trauma hospital on the West Coast. Everybody's getting hurt. All those ICUs are jam packed. You know, the hospital's packed. So I was in the pediatric ICU. I was in the PICU, and I was in you know, I'm 6'3", like 200. I was in a baby bed,
Oh my
and
god.
yeah, you know, wherever I sits, I fits. And so I had a buddy that was working on a project, working on an album, and he was like, "Hey, you can still play, right? Like you can still do the thing." I'm like, "Yeah, I probably can." He's like, "All right, I'm gonna be back with some people and some microphones, and we're gonna get to it because I think I got to get you on this track. I got to get you to put a guitar solo on this part." And sure enough, next day he showed up, two boom mics, two condenser mics, a little laptop, you know, a couple instruments, an engineer, and he was producing the session. And we got the nurses to kind of like quiet people for a second. And the biggest challenge was I was in the full, you know, TSOL brace, and
Yes.
the acoustic guitar clanking against that was the one thing that we were trying to mitigate. So I was like wrapping myself in foam and in blankets, playing the guitar kind of up here towards the mic, you know, trying to get away from the beeps and like the heart monitors and the oxygenator. And we ended up getting the take. It ended up coming across great, but it was a crash course, and in just like not even overcoming adversity, just adapting on the fly. Like, all right, this isn't working. This isn't working. What if I record it up here? And like just immediately, all right, yeah, there's a way. We can do this.
I'm glad you brought up that word adapting because right away you adapted to. There was like no like feel bad for myself or your friends feeling bad with the whole situation. It's like okay, this happened. Okay, but we can still do this, this, and that. And I always say to myself like my friends were there, my family were there, and I went through that situation. Okay, this is what happened to me. What's next? But being able to record a song like that, how would you say you adapted from being obviously an able-bodied person traveling the world to now all of a sudden someone with a disability and what that was going to look like?
Yeah, I'm still figuring it out every day.
Wow.
There's challenges that we run into every single day, and you know, Portugal demands a big operation. It's a big traveling circus. There's a ton of people behind the scenes, and it's the same people every day. We got the benefit of bringing our guys in guys that we trust, um, guys and gals that we trust to build up the stage pretty much the same way every day. Obviously, you roll into situations that are beyond your control because we don't really book our venues with accessibility as like the driving factor. It's a nice thing to have for sure, but sometimes you're rolling into a market in a city where that perfectly accessible venue just doesn't exist. So you got to figure out a way, or maybe it's accessible for people in the crowd, but the back end, they've never thought of that because they've never had a performer in a chair. I'd say that's more often than not the case, you know. Whether you can always kind of Google and look into the accessibility of the front end. That information is usually able to be found. So that's a necessity. We need to make sure that our shows are accessible for people that want to come to them. I'm kind of the afterthought. I'm kind of the secondary guy where it's like, if it works for them, I'll figure it out. I'll find a way. And that's looked a lot of different ways. That's looked like I've been forklifted onto stage. I've been carried through the center of the audience, you know, with hands on the back. I've been pulled up on like rope lifts, platforms. I've stayed all night out on the stage just because that's where the loading door is, and there's no way for me to get off. So it's like doors come up, opening act comes on. Guess who's side stage hanging out smiling? It's me. And whatever it's got to be, that's it. And we've never canceled a show for inaccessibility, even though I've played some wildly inaccessible places. Like we've found a way to do it 100% of the time. No sick days.
I love stories like that because I love telling my story about all the different places I've been and they are not the most accessible places. Like I've been in the back roads and kitchens of Mexico trying to get
Yeah.
into a club that everyone's in because there's stairs in the front. I've had to get carried in my manual chair across Miami Beach because I couldn't get my power chair down onto the beach. And I got my
Yeah.
friends carrying me like I'm King Tut in the air or lifted up to all these different places. These are things that people in the world really don't get to see. They see us there, but they have
Yeah.
no idea how we got there. And when you say 250 shows on the road on the year all over the place, like it makes me obviously, with a spinal cord, you think about, wow, how are you doing that and how inspiring that truly is. So I want to commend you for all of that.
Hearing you reiterate it makes me really tired. It's a wild thing. But yeah, man, like that was not that's no joke. Like I got forklifted onto the stage in Zagreb, Croatia, because that was the way that they kind of looked at they had the facts, they saw me, they're like, well, if we put a plank on a forklift, would he be cool with it? And I'm like, absolutely, let's go. Let's do it.
That's amazing, man. That's so cool. And I kind of actually want to go back as, being an entrepreneur myself now. I know you got into some endeavors yourself back in Seattle within the Crocodile, the Forge, or the Sovereign. So can you tell us a little bit about what was that like and your entrepreneurship side as well?
Dude, thank you for doing your research on all this. This is incredible.
Come on
Yeah,
now.
that was one of those things where even before I got hurt, being a 25-year-old kid that had already toured the country, I kind of had it in my head that like I had taken this dream about as far as you could take it, you know? I not it's kind of that small-minded young kid kind of thing. You know, there's always another level, and like in your case, chasing the pros. You know, like you're going for the big show. And I kind of already thought I was there, but I was in a minor affiliate at best. You know, there was still other levels for me to get to that I didn't even have a scope of. So yeah, man, it's one of those situations that I was really grateful to kind of have that time and that perspective to be like, okay, maybe I'm done with touring. Maybe I'm getting off the road for a second. I'm gonna get behind the scenes. So I just started educating myself in terms of music production. being behind the scenes, being real good at things like Pro Tools and Ableton and Logic. Because the first few records I made, I'm gonna age myself terribly, but I've been at this a long time. So the first records I made were on tape. You know, they're on these big
Hmm.
reel-to-reel machines, 2-inch tape, 16 track, and I was a whiz at all that stuff. But kind of while my band was going along, technology was trucking along right with it. So early mid 2000s, there's this explosion of digital recording, and I just wanted to. I didn't want to be left in the dust. I felt like my mind was still sharp, and I wanted to be great at that stuff. So I absolutely threw myself into recording, engineering, behind the scenes stuff, studio musicianship. So I played on a bunch of people's records, some credited, some not, some just for the love of the game. But being a part of a venue was always something that I really wanted to sink my teeth into. And the Crocodile in Seattle was one of the first places that showed me unbelievable love. Just
That was a
incredible.
spot, right?
That was it. Yeah, I mean, and at that time in that city, that was the epicenter of culture. And we played so many of our big first shows there. Our first headlining show was at the Crocodile. We opened for incredible people. That we opened for the Strokes on their first tour out there. Um, just played a lot of really, really fun shows. I met a lot of, kind of Seattle grunge royalty. A lot of the guys from like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden. They'd all
Yeah.
just be hanging out, drinking at the bar for shows, and so you go right up and start picking their brain. And that place was just incredible. And then uh, it was, I think, I played a show in November 2008 just with some buddies' bands, and had a good time. And I left one of my guitars in the green room after the show, like just kind of up. One thing slipped out. So I went back a couple of days later to get my guitar, and the lights were off, and the door was locked, and there was a note in the window that just said, "Thanks for 20 years of rocking the Crocodile's shutting its doors permanently." I forget the wording on it, but it was basically just like, "We're out, we're done." Blindsided people because I was friends with all the bar staff, friends with the bouncers. And this is kind of before social media, so we didn't really hear about it. I think I saw like a MySpace post about it later, but basically just very abruptly, very suddenly, they're like, "We're done." And found out the owners were just kind of over it, and there was some health code violations, and there was just it was an old venue, and venues don't age super gracefully. They get worked hard. It's a party club, so people are in there to have a good time, and they get beat up. So me and
Yeah.
a me and a bunch of my friends kind of got together and decided that we wanted to make a swing to reopen it to kind of save it, but no one I knew was, particularly wealthy. We were all dreamers, but none of us really had like the yardstick to move. We didn't have the bank account to back it up. So I joined a ownership group that was kind of making a move at it, made a bid, and there was some heavy hitters in there. There was Sean Kenny, who plays drums in Alice in Chains, like huge name. There was Susan Silver, who's like a genius Seattle businesswoman. Marcus Charles, just this incredible sort of cast of Seattle characters that knew what they were doing and they had a plan. So I joined, I think at 27, and I was absolutely the little kid at the table. You know, I I had done some touring. I had kind of like made a name. I had a little bit of money to throw into it, but for the most part, like I just got to sit and watch these guys cook. And we resurrected it. We kept the branding, we kept the name, we kept the location, but we gutted everything and we just built it back up from scratch. And it was an unbelievable experience just to see like what works, what doesn't work, what's, an objective improvement versus an aesthetic improvement. Because the one thing that we caught more than anything, this is a beloved gritty rock club in the heart of a urban place, and people were sad that we were like scraping the gum off the walls or like getting rid of some of the graffiti. They're like, you got to keep the character. So it was this constant sort of balancing act of like, yeah, keep the vibe, but like bring it into the future. So
See, people
it
love
was,
that. They love that like that natural, like the beginning, the orange. And people don't like the remakes of things, so they kind of like the original, what it used to be. So it's hard for people to
I
change it and adapt it.
I think people like the idea of the original character, and then people smell the original character, and they're like, maybe we can modernize this, you know. So we tried to find that line right in the middle, you know, keeping the character, keeping the spirit and the values of it, but modernizing it and bringing it into the future, and you know, we continue to do that. It's been great.
Now that's awesome. I can tell you're very, you're very prideful about that and happy what you're able to do. And it's awesome to hear because a lot of people, like you said before, like the social media era, people don't realize, how hard it is to run a business. And then all of a sudden, all these people are without a job out of nowhere. And then to try to be able to build that back up too. So, it's tough. It's a
Yeah,
grind, but it's fun. It's not for everybody, but I'll tell you what, it's definitely worth it. But I want to, fast forward now to where we get into, Feel It Still and how that was at the top of the, billboards and what that turned into you. And how did that, I guess, go to being like a rock star? You hear it on commercials, you hear it all over the place. And, how does that feel for you to have a song at that level where the entire world is behind it?
yeah, that was the wildest time of my life, man. The wildest time for everybody involved. You know, we're all about the same age in the group. We had all been doing
Mm-hmm.
this a really long time. We had all been doing it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for feast or famine, for the love of it. Never really expecting to hit that level. Like we were doing well in the alternative radio world, you know, we were
Mm-hmm.
doing real well in like the rock circuit, and we had a good name for ourselves. We could roll into like a rock and roll festival. We could do like a Lollapalooza, and we'd be on a big stage, and you know, we'd have some love. We didn't know the difference between where we were at and where we were going. It's a
Mm-hmm.
whole different world. And we were already on a major label. We were on Atlantic Records, and Atlantic Records has some heavy hitters, you know, but we just we weren't on that side of things. And that song literally opened doors for us. We got into rooms that meetings with people that we had only heard about, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden that pop universe opens up, and we go from, you know, the morning drive time alternative radio stations to Radio Disney to Ryan Seacrest to, you know, to all the late night shows, and just all the red carpet stuff. At a certain point, you know, I said this a number of times while I was in it. People would be like, "What's it like?" I'm like, "I'll tell you later," because right now it's just overwhelming. You know, I don't think I'm gonna have perspective on this immediately, and I might not for a couple of years. We're a handful of years out from that song, and I'm still remembering what it was really like in the moment because it was so unexpected, and it was so meteoric, and just every morning I'd wake up, I'd check my phone, and I'd be like, Kathy Lee and Hoda were singing to the song. The song, like you just like you'd read something, or like Britney Spears is dancing to it on her Instagram. Like there was just stuff that was liquefying my brain every single day about it. Or I'm like, you're joking. You have to be joking. But it was
That's so
amazing. It was
cool,
amazing.
man.
It changed my life in every way that, you know, an event or a moment or a song or an idea can change someone's life, and it still does.
Yeah,
I think,
it's like that one viral moment, like that one viral moment that life can just change overnight, literally, and that's what happened for you.
yeah, look at you. You're killing it. You know, I think people take what they got, they run with it, and they see how far they can go with it. And we knew that you know, we're a band that's always kind of prided itself on its work ethic, and making sure that our relationship with everybody that we work with stays positive. So we said yes to everything. We said yes to absolutely everything for 3 years. There wasn't an appearance or an interview or a podcast or a moment that was below us or above us or anything. We just said yes. So definition of strike thought, we knew that like this was it. This was the moment to do it. So we worked our butts off. I still attest to this day that in 2017 and 2018, I think we played more than 365 shows a year because we would do like the morning acoustic thing on the radio station or like play
Hmm.
to some contest winners, and then we'd like play the real show, and maybe we do like a late night circuit thing. It was sometimes you'd play that song four, five, six times a day, depending on what it
Hmm.
was. So I think we were, you know, exceeding shows out of the number of days. We probably played, like 800 shows in that 2 year run. And
That's insane.
it was
Insane.
exhausting. It was wild, but you had to do it, I
Hmm.
don't think this is going to come around knocking for us again anytime soon, or at least not on this level.
No, I totally get that. And going back to like the behind the scenes things that people don't see behind the stage. I heard a story the night that you won the Grammy, you rolling out on stage, you're worried about the microphone situation. I've been on the stage at the ESPYs, you go through all the behind the scenes to walk through and what it's gonna be like getting through overcoming those like the bumps that have all the wires on them and getting out to the
Yeah, yeah.
stage, making sure the microphone works. What was that like the night that you had to roll out there and when you won the Grammy?
Okay. All right. So it's more than that, man. Like we roll in our suits, and obviously there's an incredible amount of excitement for it's Grammy night. And this was the return of the Grammys at Madison Square. So it's back in New
Hmm.
York. I think it had been in LA for a couple of years at that point, so it's going back east. So we get out of the van straight to a red carpet situation, spotlights, microphones in the face. We're just doing interview after interview, and we're 100% confident at that point that we don't have a snowball's chance in hell. Like there's no way. There's no way we're taking home hardware. We're just like let's have fun. Let's have fun, and let's
Hmm.
make a go of this. And we got to kind of be outsiders in that, and we had been outsiders for a while. Like we were these kind of like weirdo guys from Alaska with like all these like beautiful six-pack pop star kind of like super tan. It just like we were always fish out of water on that stuff. So it's like, all right, let's go
Yeah.
in there and like make our jokes and uh and shake some hands and like have fun with it and do interviews. Like 10 minutes into the red carpet process, this gal comes up with, she's kind of sweating bullets, and she's got a clipboard, and she's like, "You're Eric, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Eric." She's like, "Portugal the man, Eric?" I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "All right, your category is going to be called in 27 minutes. I'm going to need you down in the third row of the auditorium there. So we're just going to want to make sure that we have you as far off of the side of stage left as possible, because if we got to move, we got to move." I'm like, what are you saying to me right now? She's like, "No, no,
Hmm.
no. We just want to make sure that you're in case you guys win. We just want to make sure that you're in a place where you could get up." I'm like, "All right, sounds good."
Hmm.
So we keep going down the aisle. I'm like, "Hey, Heidi Klum. Hey, Bruno Mars. Hey, Lady Gaga." Uh, and just like we get to our little spot. Uh, at that point, you're in the auditorium and there's already a category that's being called. Same woman comes up to me and she's like, "All right, so in 4 minutes, we're gonna need to make sure that you're down here." And they've got a chair lift so that you can get up onto stage. You're not gonna be able to go in your chair. You're gonna have to transfer into a seat. It'll take you up the stairs, and then your friends maybe could bring your chair up and you can be side stage for when they call you, okay? I'm like, "What are you saying to me right now?" She's like, "No, I'm saying if you win, if you win." I'm like, "All right, well, this sounds like a lot of effort if I win, but okay, I'll do it." So, I same woman ushers me over, and like I go up the stair chair, and all of a sudden we're just like side stage, and you're kind of getting hit in the side of the face with the spotlight, and Paul Schaefer and whoever the presenter were just like up there, and there's a whole sea of people, and the same woman comes up and she hands me a wireless microphone. She's like, "Hey, in case you want to say anything, here you go." And they haven't even called our category yet. They haven't even, we're going up against Despacito, we're going up against, Coldplay, Chainsmokers, and I don't see any of them side stage. We're the only ones up there. I'm like, "Are you saying that we won?" She's like, "I can't say that you won. We don't know. Like, we really don't know yet, but here's your microphone in case you want to say something when they bring you up." And then they called the category and they said the list of bands and then they said our band name, and it took so long to click that we had won it. Like, it wasn't, everything kind of goes, blank, and you just kind of hear the reverb, and then I heard people clapping, and then I see people turn and look at us, and I'm like, I guess we're going out onto stage. But it was like that woman was really just trying to tell me, like, "Hey, get ready." But she couldn't
Uh-huh.
tell me that we had won. But I think that they knew, and I think they were scrambling, like, "Oh, how are we going to get this guy up there? Like, what are we going to
Oh yeah, they
do?"
100% knew. They
Yeah,
definitely knew
yeah.
what was going on. And see, I'm
I
actually happy
can't,
because I know
can't
you
say
could
they knew.
see.
I can't say they knew, but I'm pretty sure they
I
knew.
get it. And I don't like surprises at all. So I'm glad I actually knew before I went out there because I would have been a mess trying to figure out first off how I'm going to get up there and then you're such transferred, go back and forth. That's insane, man. That
Dude,
story that was for the books.
Dude, even if they had said Justin Bieber, I would have gone out there and just taken it from him and been like, "No, they made me work for this. Like, it's mine."
After all that effort, absolutely yeah, go out there. You have your
Yeah,
little Kanye Taylor Swift moment right there.
dude, I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you finish. Uh, I hate surprises too. I'm glad to hear that, man. The second they start singing "Happy Birthday" to me in a restaurant, I'm out of there. I can't do it.
Yeah, yeah. Nah, I'm not good. I'm not good with that either. But I want to kind of get into this now because I know you've actually been more open about it. You obviously being a rock star, you know what comes with that the glitz and the glamour and everything, the parties and what that was like. Can you open up a little bit about how you dealt with that, how you handled that, and be able to overcome some of the things, the alcohol, things and that of that nature.
I was not perfect with it. I did my best, like I think
Mm-hmm.
anybody does, but I'm grateful that it happened to me at a ripe old age, because
Mm-hmm.
you see people that are kind of thrust into this spotlight, especially athletes, man. Like, I think about that
Mm-hmm.
all the time. I remember when people were like busting J.R. Smith's chops for partying too hard and going 3 for 17. I'm like, dude, he lives in New York City and he's got a $12 million contract and he's dating Rihanna. Like, give the kid some grace, you know? And
Absolutely.
I was not in that position, but like all of a sudden I certainly had the keys to unlock a lot more doors than I did before, and that means partying, and that means like a 24-hour lifestyle and all that stuff. And I was kind of used to it already. Like, I wasn't the most excess driven dude, but I was also in a rock band that was, being pretty heavily celebrated. But I did have this realization where I'm like, "Oh, my bandmates in the band that are supposed to be partying right alongside me are like starting to get worried that I'm partying too hard." And I think when all these party animals are telling you you're out of control, like, it means something. It means you're going too hard. And I most certainly was, like, I've always kind of had impulse control, and just kind of like always had a little guy on my shoulder here and a little guy on my shoulder here. I would always defer
Mm-hmm.
I would always defer to my associate on this side and be like, "All right, what are we getting into tonight?" So so I did. I went for it, and I I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't sleep in the bus. I was definitely overworking my body, and like spasticity was crazy, pain was crazy, so I was self-medicating. I was drinking a ton, trying to manage all that stuff. and it caught up with me, but I was able to kind of keep pulling that cart along and not really let too many of the cracks show outside. If you knew me and you were around me around that time, you'd definitely be like, yeah, he's a little out of control. But I could kind of turn it off in professional and get on camera or, you know, show up and do my best to avoid it. But all of a sudden, you know, COVID happens at the end of this massive run, this like kind of historical run for us. And I'm just used to this go, 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 go pace. Like I got 3 suitcases packed all the time. I'm ready to go, but there's nowhere to go. You know, like all of a sudden all my plane tickets are canceled, all the tours are canceled. And for the first time in my life, I don't know what my next 6 months look like. You know, I don't know where I'm going. Um, so I wanted to keep the party going, and I tried to by myself, you know, or just with my wife in the house, and I was still, you know, just getting plowed every night and waking up and being manic and trying to like trying to find purpose and, you know, make a path when I should have just been taking that opportunity to cool out, to dry out, and to be healthy. And it took me a while to figure it out. I would say like the first 6 months of the pandemic, I couldn't let go of the idea of not partying and not going for it. So I had to course correct, and I'm grateful that I was able to do it while I was off the road, and I was grateful that I was able to do it before I really hit, you know, a real rock bottom where I screwed up my life in some sort of irreparable way, or hurt somebody, or hurt myself, or you know, damaged relationships. Um, so yeah, I had to check out, and I decided, you know, that I was gonna take it upon myself to get straight and get right. So I checked myself into the closest treatment center I could find, and I got dry, and that was, gosh, it's gonna be 4 years from next week, you know. So
Wow.
I'll be at that 4 year mark on 10/10, and I'm constantly grateful for that.
Well, congratulations. And I know a big thing for you too was also to make sure all, places for treatment are accessible. Because I know a lot
Yeah,
of times, not everyone has that ability to get the help that they need, especially when someone with a disability, they don't, actually sometimes think of us. We get kind of pushed in the shadow. Can you
yeah,
talk a
yeah.
little bit about why that was so important to you?
Yeah, well, it was important to me because I'm like, can I get in the door of this place? You know,
Hmm.
when I would think about, you know, what that cliche version of a treatment center is, it's like Cliffside, Malibu, or you know, the Palisades, they always have kind of like a beachy sort of motif, and you see people like, you know, strolling around in the sand, and I'm just
Hmm.
like, if it's anything like it looks like in my head, it's going to be a nightmare on wheels. So it was just a lot of calls, and you know, a lot of these places, they're not hospitals, they're privately owned institutions and facilities, so they're not necessarily beholden to, you know, all the strict things that a hospital would be with the ADA. So the place I ended up going to was, you know, this super old nursing facility, like this nursing home. And it wasn't ADA, but they answered enough of my questions and sort of like eschewed enough of my fears and let me know what I was getting myself into enough to where I'm like, yeah, I can make that work. If I can tour Central America, I can tour this, you know, like it's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
Uh,
I know you also got into doing an original motion picture soundtrack with with a skier who was also in a wheelchair. Can you tell us a little bit about that story, what that was like, and how
Dude,
that became so like such a
that
mission for you as well?
full circle, Trevor Kinnison, obviously I knew who that guy was just from scrolling Instagram. It's the guy that does all the backflips on the sit ski. Um, but there's this incredible story that was put together just sort of through discovery where he drops off a jump in Jackson Hole called Corbett's Collar. And then there's this sort of exposition of, well, what's Corbett's Collar? Who's that named after? who was Barry Corbett. And then we learn about Barry Corbett, who was, a contributing editor to New Mobility, literally wrote a book called Options about what are your options as a person with a spinal cord injury. Just one of these incredible pioneers in our world, and I feel like I just owe a massive debt to Barry, and Trevor's pushing it forward still every day. But the film, my involvement within the film came about because of the composer Mark Crawford. Mark really wanted to make
Hmm.
sure that there were disabled players playing his score, at least in part. So, um, yeah, Josh Berman, the filmmaker, and Mark Crawford, the composer, came out to my studio in Tacoma, Washington, and sat with me while I just played a variety of instruments on the score. We had a lot of laughs, had a lot of storytelling, had a lot of playing, and there's just a lot of layers to the score, a lot of layers to the story. So it was just one of those things that came together real sweetly, and incredibly cool thing to be a part of.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Our sponsor for this podcast is the Teachers Insurance Plan in New Jersey, and we're big into highlighting educators in the world and being able to, shine a light on them because of everything that they do for us. I know that you really were able to partner up with a group to make sure musical instruments get put into a bunch of different schools around the country. I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about that, why that was so important to you, and also is there a special educator in your life that really stuck out that you want to give a little shout out to?
Oh, cool, man. I love that. Yeah, music education is crucial to me. We skipped over a lot of years in the beginning of this from that time when I got hurt to before I actually joined this band. In that interim time period, I was playing with a few people. I was, picking up tours here and there, but for the most part, I was teaching. I was teaching kids music, and I love it because everything that I do ties back to what I learned in music school and in the music programs of my school. And again, small town, growing up, not much to do, a lot of snow on the ground. If you were an athlete, you were super dedicated to your craft because you'd have to freeze your butts off. But for us musician kids, we were just stuck inside with our instruments, practicing all day. So I always kind of took that as an advantage. And I know some absolute shredder players out of Alaska, and I think it's in part because of that. I think you're surrounded by all this beauty, but also you've got, you know, music educators that really believe in what they're doing, and then you've got kids that push each other. So I had a ton of competition from players that I still play with. Zach Carruthers, the original bass player and co-founder of Portugal the Man, him and I met in jazz band in Wasilla High School like a billion years ago. He was playing saxophone, I was playing upright bass, and we were just like playing Charlie Mingus and Miles Davis tunes, as just like 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. So it's super, super, super close to my heart. And I think even when I was a kid in those programs, there was always this sort of notion that those programs might not be the most prioritized or the most funded. And our school borough certainly had massive funding issues, small town. I think almost all small towns deal with that, where education funding just isn't necessarily always the priority, and the arts and music are always kind of the first things to get chopped. So if they can get advantaged at all or helped out at all by people that have been through it, come out on the other side, had some success with it, I think it's your responsibility to put a little bit back in that coffer and keep it going because that's what got you everything that you got. So
Absolutely. Is
shout
there I was gonna say, is there a teacher that
e,
you want to shout out that helped you get there?
I'd say Dale Toomey. I'd say Mark Thompson. I'd say all the way back to my very first piano teacher that I had in Palmer,
Hmm.
Alaska, Miss Hitchcock. I can't remember her first name right
Hmm.
now. I just found out that Mrs. Hitchcock is still teaching piano at the age of 90 in Palmer, Alaska. I just recently learned that. I found her on Facebook, but yeah, shout out to all the Hitchcocks and all the Toomeys and all the Kevin Worrells and still to this day, like the producers that we work with, Brian, Danger Mouse, like the world's full of educators in the arts, and I hope to continue to pass on what I know and help keep moving education forward with music. Like that's how we get that's how we keep going forward. That's how we get better.
Absolutely, Eric Hawk. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Couple Believe podcast. I thank you for sharing your short stories, taking your time, and just giving the people a little bit more background about yourself and letting us into your personal life. So I thank you for coming on, man. It's great to have another spinal cord injury brother on here. We need more of us in the
Right.
world sharing our stories.
It was such a pleasure meeting you in person for the first time a handful of years ago, and I love that we finally got to do this and come together and I'm grateful for the opportunity to hang, man. You're a fantastic hang, and thanks for letting me run my mouth.
Absolutely, brothers. This episode is brought to you by Mobility Works. As the nation's largest provider of wheelchair accessible vehicles, Mobility Works has been helping people connect with who and what matters most since 1997. Visit mobilityworks.com to find your ideal mobility solution today.